Macron, le Big Mac.
Emmanuel Macron.
Emmanuel, I think that's his name. Macron, Big Mac, le Big Mac, le Big Mac. So, he's just been elected. He's 39-year-old human man.
What a fun little intro this is.
Youngest president of the Fifth Republic. I've got some fun facts about him if you'd like to hear. So he's
this is Wikipedia or?
He's got a dog named Figaro. His name is the lowest in Scrabble points of any president in the Fifth Republic, a measly 9 compared to Sarkozy with an impressive 34. He's 6 centimeters less than the average height. So a short French leader promising change, also tough Brexit negotiator. Are we getting concerned? Oh, and he of course married his high school drama teacher, who is apparently his mentor and inspiration.
Yep.
They don't mention the age gap because it gets them pretty mad.
Yeah. Right, should we move on to the politics?
Yeah. Do we have to? Because I got some more. I got some more fun. No, okay.
Let's have a vote on it.
Let's move on. So, what does it mean? Now that Le Big Mac has been elected? So, I mean, one obvious thing for the UK is that he's very pro-EU. He's going to be a tougher negotiator when it comes to Brexit. So that's one thing for the Brits out there to be potentially a little bit concerned about. But obviously for France, I mean, France is having a tough time. It's had very low growth in the last few years. Unemployment is high. It's 24% amongst the 15 to 24-year-olds, the youngest. So that's the main problem I think people want to see solved. But you know, what's he going to do for France?
It seems very Obama-esque, doesn't it? He ran on a platform of change, of things are going to get better, everybody. Don't worry, there's some hope.
And also the cross-partisanship as well. He's
going
to be able to bring people together.
I mean, one of his biggest ways that he tries to sell himself is by calling him a centrist. He's a socialist at heart, but pro-business.
Yes.
Which seems like a bit of an oxymoron.
He's a socialist at heart who's pro-business. And in fact, he was in the socialist government for a short time under Hollande, and his main thing that he was known for was drafting changes to policy that would make them more pro-business.
Yeah. So he's a socialist capitalist. That's it.
He's a socialist capitalist.
Yeah.
Just what we need to
sounds good.
Bring France together.
So on the socialist side, I mean, he's promised a 50 billion euro fiscal stimulus for France to invest in certain areas, especially skills and training and ecological issues as well, ecological development. He's obviously very big on the environment. He recorded a heartfelt message to American scientists the other day in basically perfect English, saying, "Come here, we know Trump hates the environment. Come here and bring your expertise, and we'll give you jobs and money."
And the stimulus, I mean, that's fantastic. I mean, they've got these problems with growth and with unemployment, and you think, well, this makes sense, right? It's a very big stimulus in terms of public investment. I think you mentioned health, the environment, and so forth. So this is something we'd really like to see in the UK, but we just never
get round to it. we never elect the right government. That seems to be the problem.
Unfortunately. Yeah. So this sounds really positive.
So he's promised to raise the foreign aid budget to the EU recommended level, which is
0.7%.
0.7%, yeah. I think currently it's like 0.4 or something. And also he's called out, so within the EU, obviously he's very pro-EU, but he does believe there are certain areas need reforming. One area in particular, he's talking about Germany's enormous trade surplus. At the moment, Germany are exporting far more than they're importing, and this is negatively affecting other EU countries, because obviously we trade with each other more than anyone else as a single bloc. So he's called it a very big problem. It's standing in the way of economic development and of economic integration, of getting everyone on the same level, on the same page.
It's interesting to think how France and Germany are going to come up against each other when it comes to that.
Absolutely, and we've seen the first signs of that with Martin Schulz, who's running for Chancellor, they call it in Germany, right? Chancellorship, the Chancellor position that will be vacated soon.
The Chancellor.
So Martin Schulz has basically said, "Fuck off, Macron, that's not the issue, you're a dick." So we're seeing signs of locking horns. That's not verbatim, he didn't. It's not exactly his words.
But it'll be a good test of Germany's commitment to the EU, because this is obviously something that's for the benefit of the Eurozone overall, but of course is Germany going to want to, they're going to want to fight that tooth and nail for their own self-interest, depending on how well they can equate their own self-interest with the Eurozone as a whole.
Exactly.
So that's one really interesting issue. Interested to see how that plays out.
And on the EU, and now moving on to the bad policies of Macron.
Categorically
Yeah, so he's basically saying, okay, we're going to spend 50 billion euros and invest in the economy, blah, blah, blah. But he's saying over the next 5 years, we're going to match that with 60 billion euros in savings to fall in line with the EU's Growth and Stability Pact, which says that you can only spend 3%, I think, you can only be in 3% deficit government spending. So it kind of, although it's positive that money is being spent, it's the fact that they think that they have to save that somehow instead of making a profit via investments, via investment in education, in green technologies, etc. He's already thinking we need to save something, so we need to cut some budgets.
But at least he's not renewing these jobs when people retire, rather than wholesale firing lots of people.
Well, I mean, 120,000 civil servants are going to be fired.
Oh, so it's
apart from that,
to wholesale fire. Oh, that is bad.
The other thing I'd mention as well about Macron is he's giving the impression of having a really tough line on immigration. So he's coming down hard on the French version of secularism, laïcité, which is what some would call it quite oppressive towards religious people. The banning of burqas and burkinis and things like that, religious symbols. And we don't actually know. I don't know if he's going to follow through, like for example, checks on the border.
He had to come out as tough on immigration in this election.
I mean,
and you can understand why their blood is up. I mean, there's been 4 attacks in the last few years. It's very understandable that they, even though those are completely unrelated things,
it's a political move to try and win over the Le Pen voters, the Front National lovers, and it seems to have been successful. How loyal he'll stay to those pledges, we don't know.
Remains to be seen.
So the question really is now, in terms of the trends that we're seeing, not just in Europe but around the world, of the rise of the populist right, is this bucking the trend? So are we seeing now, is this another sign that the rise of the right is being impeded successfully?
Well, I mean, there's a few things to kind of qualify that point with. I think one is that, it's a binary, it's not a win or lose. As a lot of people are saying, there was still something like, I don't know how many people in France, 43 million or something, still voted for Le Pen and saw her with the history her party has, her father convicted of racism multiple times, still voting for her, even though she has done a lot to cleanse the party's image. So, I mean, that's still more than further than they've ever got. So it's an indication that they've grown. Also, he's a little bit different. Macron as well, is he a victory of internationalism, and he's also kind of a populism himself, right? He's run on an outsider platform, so in a way he could maybe fit in some senses into this trend of populist winners, because he's like, I've come from an outsider against this establishment. So they had 2 real anti-establishment candidates there, so I guess the rise of the far right and the anti-establishment are 2 different things. But he does fit into the trend in that way.
I was going to say exactly that. I was going to say that it's not, the trend is not so much about the right. The trend is anti-establishment. The trend is someone coming from outside, the Trumps, the Farages.
Bernie Sanders, of course, in America on the left was another example of it. So anti-establishment will keep going. The far right, I imagine, will continue to grow.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's going to keep going until we see a paradigm change of the establishment, of what the establishment means. When we start seeing money filter out a little bit more of the mainstream parties, of the establishment representatives.
Well, I think maybe when people start to feel that their quality of life is improving, that the service that they're getting provided are improving, rather than their wages feeling like they're either stagnating or decreasing, like they have been for a long time in the UK, and I imagine elsewhere in the Eurozone too, although the UK is the only country which has actually seen wages decline while the economy's grown. So, but I think when people start to feel that their lives are getting better, and they're getting an actual stake in the economy as it's growing, then maybe we'll see this trend decrease, but not before then.